positively associated with good health. And the thing that it benefits most is your cognitive functioning if you're employed. So this is something that we really need to think about. If you're being locked out of jobs, it's hurting you physically and cognitively.
So, fourth panel of the day, we have one more after this. Mira Weiss, Esquire, colleague of mine in the pursuit of law and all things justice. She is an entrepreneur, change initiator by starting her own firm. She's a subject matter expert in health law, which I know when Dan and I and Myra went to law school, health law was not one of the areas that we always talked about, but as we have found out with 80 million baby boomers, it's critically important. She has particular emphasis on elder law and individuals with disabilities, which is near and dear to me. The EEOC is one of my clients. Her DNA includes time at the Health and Hospital Corporation, which means you're battle tested. And she's a frequent lecturer around the country on issues around health law, elder law, and the ADA. Let's give a nice round of applause to our next moderator, Myra Weiss. Myra, you will have the microphone. I yield to you, Myra.
Good afternoon. Talk about humbled. Whoa, that was very inspirational. You know, I am now going to set up my own gig up here, you know. One of the things that I've learned, transitioning my career from being an individual corporate executive with people to help support me in the gig world to going out on my own, is that you got to learn to do all this yourself. And you do. When you have to, you do. So one of the things is people are afraid of all of this stuff. Nah, you'll get it. Not a problem. We are going to talk public policy this afternoon. And I am not a public policy wonk. I'm more of a doer person. So I am extremely gratified that I got to meet the three panelists and to work with them on their presentations for today. I think you're going to find this very informative. The information and their biographical information is in the material on the website. So I'm going to make this short and sweet. The first speaker today will be Jack Kupferman, and you're going to learn more about him as our honoree later on today. But my term for Jack is activist. He is head of the Gray Panthers here in New York, and he devotes his life to activism in matters involving seniors. Our second panelist, Dr. Ruth Finkelstein, an amazing scholar and in her own right an activist. She has recently left the Columbia University at a very, very high level to head the Brookdale Institute on the Aging, which is a premier organization in the United States. And really, really grateful to have her here today. And lastly, and in my last email to everyone, I called her Dr. RR because we have Dr. R and then we have Dr. RR. We have Dr. Rose Rudnitsky, who is, the one word I would ascribe to her is she is a revolutionary in many ways. She's a very holistic educator and is going to address the issues of discrimination and activism in the field of education and bringing intergenerational programs together so that we can all learn to work more closely. I think the rules of the road are that we hold questions till the end, so please feel free to write them down. With that, I'm going to start with Jack Kupferman.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Thank you so much, Mara, and thank you so much, Dan, for inviting me here today. How many of you here know what Gray Panthers is? So we have about half the room. that remembers Grey Panthers from back in the day. Grey Panthers was the premier activist organization for the rights of older persons from the 70s forward. We're not as robust as we had been, but we certainly are small and scrappy. I am going to make a suggestion that each one of you go to our website, which is greypanthersnyc.org, and to see what we're up to now. It's pretty amazing, done with zero resources, literally zero resources. And one of the things that's most important about Grey Panthers is where it started from, which is exactly what we're talking about today, which is employment and productivity for older persons. As you may recall, Maggie Kuhn, the founder of Grey Panthers and one of the iconic activists of the 20th century, she had been forced out of her work at the Presbyterian Church at age 65. And she said at the time, basically, "Excuse me, this is not acceptable." And she said that this is ageist, and I will not stand for it. So as a result of her, of what had happened to her, she created with a bunch of her friends, Grey Panthers. So this brings back where we had been at the beginning. So it's important that we talk about employment, productivity, ageism, and how to provide opportunities for older people in the gig economy. So, and what I'm going to talk about is a little bit different than what we've been speaking of before. I'm looking at policy, not necessarily public policy, which is legislative, statute, and enforcement, but policy for at the corporate level, policy for in the mindset, policy confronting ageism. Now, all of us know that there is a robust set of statutes and regulations that theoretically address age discrimination in the workplace. But frankly, it's a bunch of nonsense, because there's almost never an positive results for older people. It's a whole lot of work with no results. So it isn't always, while that's important to have that enforcement mechanism in place, the more important thing is how do you expand opportunities for older people to be productive, whether it's because they want to, whether they feel impelled to, or whether they need to. So this is our charge here today. How do we find project-based, gig-based, whatever it may be for older people? Now, as there has been this trend, not trend, but the demographic perspective where older people, there are millions of them. There's currently about 1 billion people over the age of 60 globally. That number is growing exponentially. Very soon, as many of us know, there are going to be more people over the age of 60 than are under the age of 15 around the world. Ouch. How are we going to make sure that all of these people have an opportunity to live the kind of lives that they want? Now, medical technology means better health, increased longevity. Now, with the increased longevity, we have a challenge, a global challenge, a societal challenge, an individual challenge. This is not the old age of your grandparents. People have 60, it's still 60. 70 is still 70. But your physical and mental desire and capacity is not what it used to be. And society is slowly changing to accommodate that, in this day's efforts is evidence of that. But the question is, how do we accomplish that in small and large increments to provide productive opportunities for older people? As I was talking about the various frameworks, they do exist. And what we need to do is develop frameworks at the policy level that encourage employment and opportunities. That may mean in a corporate environment, maybe there's an opportunity for people to, for an adjustment in how work is accomplished. that we encourage people to work longer or in different modes, whether it's at home. And the question is, what is retirement anymore? It's not necessarily, as we've been talking about, doing the golf thing. People want to work for whatever reason it may be. And it's important that globally and societally, with all the things that we've been discussing, that those opportunities be made. That's part of that is by demanding it. Not necessarily waiting to sit back and have it happen for you, but demand it, whether it means talking to your legislators or talking to the companies that you often interact with, or just talking to your families, so you can develop new ways of interacting to find opportunities in entrepreneurship or gig or whatever you want to call it. It really doesn't matter from my perspective. Just continue to do more. There's insufficient opportunity that's presented, and as we've been talking about ageism in the workplace, that was so beautifully presented just before. How do you challenge that? It's not easy, because people are always going to have their perspectives. And even though things are changing, they aren't changing for everybody. And they aren't changing fast enough. Society has not caught up to where people are. Our perspective is not caught up to where people are. And people need protections, always need protections of various stripes. And it's time that we as a whole and each individual of us has that perspective to say, look, we want to work, we want to make money, we want to do something productive. What are the tools that we have to do that? A lot of what we've been discussing this today has been about tools. So I'm looking forward to hear how there are other tools, policy-wise, individual, business-wise, that can create the kind of future that older people in the world want and older people in the US today want. I just want to say thank you. I didn't get to say all that I wished to, but it's a start. Thank you.
Where is our timekeeper? Okay. Okay. I want to ask, before we move on, just a second, could you comment on the City Hall hearing that you attended last week?
I want
This
to
week.
thank you so much. Thank you for the reminder. That was one of those items that I didn't get to. At a minimum, there's an increasing acknowledgement of age discrimination in the workplace. For the first time ever, at the City Council, there was a hearing on age discrimination in the workplace. The fact that it even occurred and that it just happened, it's a really beautiful thing, very important, just to raise the profile of that. Whether or not there's going to be new policies that come from that, I don't know. But the fact that the issue has been raised is perhaps the most important, and it's amongst the people in this room, as well as the people who are hearing it live stream, as well as the advocates and the professionals, to say, look, this is an issue. It has not yet been raised, and it's important for everyone. If we improve the lives of older people, we improve the lives for everyone. So that was an important first step. And people are going to make promises. Whether or not those promises are going to be kept, who knows? Probably not. But it's important that the voices are heard, and that's what we're hoping to accomplish. Thank you. Thank you for reminding me.
Dr. Finkelstein, would you like to elaborate more on?
Sure. No.
We can all go home now unless you want to hear my story as an entrepreneur, which I am, and frankly, we all are, but go ahead. That's my perspective.
So, no, it'll take 2 more sentences for my truly oppositional nature to emerge. But, which of them? So, some time ago, I realized that this burgeoning movement of senior entrepreneurship, which there undoubtedly is, and is undoubtedly an economic engine, and has just been shown to be an economic engine in New York City by a report that Center for an Urban Future put out earlier this week. Google it and read it if you haven't. So senior entrepreneurship certainly is an economic engine, and senior entrepreneurship is certainly good for senior entrepreneurs. Of this, there is no question. So that's the glass half full perspective. Now, the glass half empty perspective is that senior entrepreneurship is the handmaiden of age discrimination. There's an awful lot of people who become senior entrepreneurs of necessity rather than by choice. And we don't do ourselves any favors by pretending that that's not true. We need a policy perspective and framework that is able to fight age discrimination in the workplace and to grow capacity and skills and policy to support senior entrepreneurs. These things are not in opposition, but they are alternatives, one for the other. And I also need to say that because of the way our benefits system is structured in this country, which is a choice, it is not a natural law that health insurance is associated with employment. It is not a natural law that supplementary pension, which is not in this country supplementary. I defy any of you to live on just a Social Security pension. It wasn't designed for people to live on. It was designed to be one part of a three-legged stool. We already lost one of those legs, but jobs are holding up the third just barely, but we need that. And disability insurance and life insurance, all of these things are available in the work environment and not affordable, if they're even available, in the individual market. And we, again, don't do ourselves any favors by ignoring that fact. Every one of you who left a large employer and struck out on your own got to meet that other half of your Social Security payment that you never thought about before in your life. That's what your quarterly taxes are, right? That's what you're paying. You're paying that other half of your Social Security payment that they used to pay. You're paying the Medicaid input into the Medicare Trust Fund that they used to pay. And for people here who are over 50 but under 65, I know you all know what goes on about paying for health insurance, right? And if anybody thinks that's about to get better, they're residents of Stoner Island, which I learned about earlier by eavesdropping in Mexico.
Woodstock's up.
This is not on its way to being fixed at a federal or policy level. This is the current reality. So there's some value in asking ourselves, are pushing out older workers on the one hand and striking out on our own as entrepreneurs on the other the only alternatives that exist? Is there anything else? So I'm here to say, yeah, in fact there is. The anything else is that as the workforce changes in multiple ways, employers need to change in their understanding of who is a worker and what appropriate working rules are for people to thrive. This is moving to a framework of inclusion instead of this framework of exclusion that leads to all kinds of discrimination. The framework of inclusion says, workers who are older still have value and productivity. In fact, they know shit that nobody else does. Workers with disabilities, in fact, bring enormous stick-to-itiveness and skills and underutilized abilities, and I get to pick the cream of the crop because nobody else is brave enough to, to go that way. It shouldn't disqualify or make a glass ceiling for men and women to have families. Instead, it should be accommodated, the difference in schedules that people need in different phases of their lives. So we did a bunch of research in big firms and medium-sized firms and small firms, and we identified the practices, this is all written about pretty extensively, the practices that are associated with thriving in the workplace for everybody. You will see immediately that these are not age-specific. People need them for different reasons and use them in different ways at different phases of their lives, but they're good for people across the life course. Flexibility with regard to hours and with regard to place of work. And for those of you who say some jobs can be flexible and some jobs can't, I will introduce you to the factory line, the Thai factory that has flexible hours. How do they do that without slowing up production? This is Brooks Brothers. This isn't, Mon Pa's artisanal pie factory. These guys have production quotas, right? Or Son and Sons. Was that Aegis? Do you think that was Aegis when they said Mon? Well, anyway, you got to really, really, really think about this stuff. But anyway, this is Brooks Brothers. And what do? They cross-train so that there is someone else who can do your job on the line, and you cannot come in for X number of minutes a year in addition to your paid vacation, because stuff happens. Whether it's my granddaughter had a recital or I need to take my partner to the doctor, right? And the line goes on. So more jobs can have flexibility if you think about it than if you just make the knee jerk, not here, not. Job restructuring. Let me give you another in the production example of that. Amy's Breads. New Yorkers, some people are New York. You know Amy's Breads, right? They're good. They're good. And they grew really fast from a bakery to a wholesaler. So Amy started this place around 25 years ago, and hired all her friends. So guess what? Are they young or are they old right now? Well, if they all started 25 years ago in their 30s, and of course they've hired new people along the way, but some of the original skilled and gifted bakers are no longer have quite the rotator cuffs they once did and quite the backs they once did. And what has she done? She's restructured jobs. You know how the bread should feel. You knead it, you decide when it's done, you shape the loaves. The young guy next to you puts it up in the high oven. It's just not a big deal. Because these functions used to go together in this order doesn't mean that is a natural law. You can rearrange functions. There are companies that have taken the responsibility for data entry and computer entry away from older salespeople, older case managers, the people with the contacts all over the community, because their contacts are too valuable to lose, but they don't want to spend their time doing the new technology that, of course, they should have learned. Nobody's arguing they shouldn't have learned it, but they didn't. So does that mean we should lose the fact that they know everybody in town because they didn't? Right? Should we penalize ourselves because they didn't do that thing? That doesn't seem right. And I can go on and on. Opportunities for training, dip way down across the life course, which doesn't make any sense because, of course, the data shows that older employees stay with a given company for a longer period of time than younger employees. So if we're going to be using age discrimination to ration out training, we should be doing it the opposite way. I'm not recommending that, but it's irrational the way it happens. The research on the reciprocal benefits of mentorship is very strong, and that makes sense in the entrepreneurial context as well as in an employment context. Actually, most of these things do, just by the way. And what's the primary motivation to work at 60 plus? Anybody know?
Purpose.
Purpose. It's not money. It's not creativity. The primary characteristic that makes a good job for a 60 plus person is autonomy, which makes sense. I'm with a group of entrepreneurs. What do you have in that? You have autonomy, but you can also provide autonomy in the context of an existing company. Those two things are not at odds with one another. So this list, I have not completed this list, but I do want to sort of close by saying that the policy work before us must include the respect and valuing and creation of the working conditions to make good jobs for people beyond an old and outdated and outmoded retirement age, as well as supporting with investment opportunities, with training, with access to incubators, access to startups, the entrepreneurs who choose to leave the workforce. We shouldn't force people in or out. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to change the focus just a bit to the world of education and some how we can put into play some of the ideas that have just been presented by Dr. Finkelstein.
Well, I can't believe two things, for one thing. I can't believe I'm on a panel with two such distinguished panelists. And I also can't believe I'm on a panel speaking about aging. This is something I've tried to avoid very much. But we are boomers, and we are loud. You know, baby boomers, we boom. Dan sent us an article, and it had three titles: The Gray Wave, The Silver Tsunami, and The Age Quake. So here we are, making a lot of noise, doing things that are hopefully going to change the world. I think when we were young, we really tried to change the world, and it all of a sudden turned back, to change right back. But we do. I'm going to talk about being employed, because it's true. When you can't get a job, you make a job for yourself, and being an entrepreneur may not be a choice for everybody. I work in a very traditional environment. I'm an academic. I'm a dean. I never thought I'd be a dean, but I am, and so I'm a leader of people. Being employed is positively associated with good health. And the thing that benefits most is your cognitive functioning if you're employed. So this is something that we really need to think about. If you're being locked out of jobs, it's hurting you physically and cognitively to not be able to find a job, and that's not right. Senior volunteering is related to delayed physical disability. It enhances cognition, lowers the risk of death. There's an Experience Corps in the United States, which I didn't know about, and volunteers aged 55 and older tutor kids in reading. Now, I taught at SUNY New Paltz for 20 years, and for 10 of those years, I ran the Reading Center, where we taught reading teachers to tutor children. And reading really is an extremely important cognitive function. And when someone has difficulty reading, it really impairs their ability to interact with the world and with knowledge. So it's very important. But one of the things that they found was it wasn't just the senior people who benefited from the tutoring. The children benefited from the tutoring. And they did much better than a control group of children who were not tutored by the Experience Corps. So this benefits everybody. It's intergenerational. And when you think about it, if you go into the workforce, that's intergenerational. I have a boss who's younger than I am. And that's going to happen to you when you're my age, right? And I'm not going to tell you how old I am. The number of people aged, Jack referred to this, the number of people aged 65 or older will rise from 900 million to 2 billion between 2015 and 2015. Nearly a quarter of the world's population will reach the age of 60, be over the age of 60 by that time. So we thought that maybe we would come through with a wave because we were the baby boom and we were so big, but that's not true. This is something that is a sustained phenomenon, and it's going to affect the entire world. So I want to talk about what people can do in the workplace, because many of us still work, and many of us are, I'm retired, but I'm working too. And so I'm a professor emeritus at SUNY New Paltz, but I'm also a dean at Mercy College. And at Mercy, thank goodness, we don't have an age policy where you have to retire. When I was at Columbia, it was 70 years old. And when you hit 70, you had to retire, and that was taken out. So I have several faculty members who are above the age of 80. And I see the discrimination, and some of it's very overt. We're in a constrained environment economically. Enrollments in teacher education have been cut in half in the past decade because teaching has become a very unpopular career to choose. And there's a tremendous shortage of teachers in New York City, everywhere. You know, we're in Manhattan, in the Bronx, and Westchester. We used to be the biggest provider of teachers for New York, and we don't have the students to do it. But I have very vibrant, caring, loving professors. One of the things that the research shows is that older workers are calmer. They're more resilient. Their experience has taught them that whatever agita you have now is going to pass. And they bring that positive energy to the workplace. My 80-year-olds have had people say to them, what are you doing here? Why didn't you retire? You're taking the place of a job for somebody who is younger. And that's not really true. That does not happen. There's no research that shows that. The number of jobs is enough for everybody. But again, we tend to be competitive with each other, and that's something that, you know, we view things from scarcity. I was talking with Alan about that. Alan was saying that everything's fear-oriented rather than having confidence in the way the context is. More experienced workers have less variability. Honoring their experience is one of the things that you can do as a supervisor. If you're not an entrepreneur and you have people working for you, one of the things you can do is honoring their experience and understanding the research. They're less likely to make mistakes than older people. So what do? There's a technique called reverse mentoring. You pair experienced and novice colleagues so that they learn from one another. Even if it's not a program, a mentoring program, you put two people on a project, an intergenerational project, and that the younger people have different perspectives on the world, right? Different skills, and the older person does too. Put them together, make them work together, make them get to know each other, and that will help to reduce ageism, but it will also help your company function better. So that reverse mentoring is a really good technique to use.
We're going to have to wrap up in just a moment.
Okay. So I just have two more things to do. Model, reflecting on your biases as a leader, as the boss. Don't articulate the process of saying, oh, gee, maybe am I being biased against this person because of this person's age? And articulate that so as a leader you're setting the example. That's it. So I just wanted to say, give us a couple of tools to deal with this in the workplace because I deal with it every day.